evening and welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. We are back with Evermore on a Thursday tonight, thanks to the Midweek Cup game, if you want to call it that, last night. I'm Chris. I'm joined by the stat man. We've got the best free transfer since Denver Bar. Carl's back in the house, and he's decided to join us fresh from a cup final. We've got Pep Guardiola himself. Odie is back on the channel. How are we doing, lads?
Yeah, not bad, mate.
I told you I was going to get you for that tie, Odie. No room in here, mate. No room.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's all right, mate. I love it, mate. Odie's obviously been grafting hard as we're all just sitting there slumming it in my casual t-shirts. But yeah, we've got loads to get stuck into tonight, guys. Just before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, please click that like and subscribe button. As we mentioned, we have gone over 2,000 subscribers, a little bit more on that in a minute. We have gone over 2,000 subscriber mark, so we're absolutely buzzing, over the moon. We're such a young channel. We're younger than the takeovers, I keep saying. We're not even a year old yet. We have our birthday, December, Mark, I believe it is. Mark knows better than me. He's like my podcast wife, has to remind me of dates because my memory isn't quite good anymore. But so we're only less than a year old, which is great. So to get that number is brilliant for us, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And we're live as well, as always. So jump in the comments. We've already got a few of the regulars bouncing in there. We can see the names coming in. So great to have you guys in. So we're going to get stuck into the first topic here, which was 2 games in one, really. One good, one not so good. So, Odie, I'm going to start with you, mate, because I think you finally woken up from being at St. James's Park last night after watching that ball fest, mate. Was it Bruno's pen that hit you in the face that woke you up a bit, mate? Did that break the slumber?
Yeah, it didn't miss me by much. The first 70 minutes last night were not entertaining. I think it's probably, if anything, this probably is a sign maybe that Eddie's making towards the people upstairs about coming in the January transfer window.
Yeah,
I think if you say that probably if he's fit, Isak comes in and Wood goes out, would there be that many other changes? Apparently Fraser has picked up a knock, so apparently he was to be included in the squad and then wasn't available. Whether he would have started ahead of Anderson anyway, I don't know, because he seems to have dropped off the face of the earth this season. Yeah, it wasn't very good. Jamal Lascelles is still somehow the 4th choice centre-half at Newcastle United. Mateta at one stage got the ball, was back to goal, just turned round, spun Lascelles, just ran away from him. And Pope stuck out a brilliant arm for a save. More of those saves later. I've got to be honest and say that if you told me we were going to lose that game on penalties, I wouldn't have been surprised. If you told me we were going to win that game on penalties, the big difference, the other big difference I've got to say is I expected St. Maximin and Anderson to play absolutely out of their skins, to be desperate to try and get themselves ready for first-team Premier League football. Some people said they were really, really disappointed with Anderson. I thought he played at much the same level as all the others, which just wasn't really good enough. On the flip side, I found St. Maximin to be at his absolutely frustrating worst. Hands all over the place when people didn't pass him the ball at the right time. Wants everything on his plate. Trippier played a brilliant ball. He'd started a run. Trippier just lifted the ball over the left back for him to go for. He just stopped his run. He didn't even look for it. He just stopped his run. And yeah, it wasn't very good. To be fair, it did get better when Bruno, Trips, Botman came on, because the pace of the game picked up and they started playing the ball around a bit more. But to have scored 3 out of 3 pens and then to think, right, either of these could win it. Bruno's, I don't know, I think I put in last night in the chat about Simone Zaza's penalty run-up for Italy that time in the Euros. It reminded me, I mean, honestly, I don't know whether he was hoping that if he put that many things into his run-up, the keeper would move, but he didn't. If you want to compare it to Sunday, though, I've got to say, I thought Sunday wasn't a great performance. And if I'm being really honest, I know the stats say, 1.6 to 1.4 in expected goals, which I know some people have no truck by. But I think if Southampton, that chance at half-time, if El Nusri scores that, I think it's a massively different game second half. Said that, he didn't. And the goal machine that is Chris Wood stepped off the bench to get the second goal. Wood did miss a really, I don't know how much it made it onto the highlights or if it made it in at all. There was one really shocking back pass, I think, by Mark Gouy, which left Wood in on the goalkeeper. And he took it first time when I think he actually had time to take a touch, look up and see if he could have squared it to someone running in. He didn't. which I don't know whether you take that as he's a striker in confidence, so he's prepared to take the shot on, or it's the level that Chris Wood's at that he took that shot on and didn't look up to see who else he could have passed it to. But
is that like from last night, Audie?
Yeah.
Well, I seen it on the highlights because the ball came in, and then when he went through, he just hit it first time. I was like, what the hell? Like, if you had looked up, you may have more time on the ball anyway, or to try and square it. But just to add to what you said, I think obviously I wasn't there, unfortunately, and couldn't watch it anyway. I had to listen to the Bohr and Anderson on BBC Radio Newcastle. But I just felt with all the changes that we made, and I felt I scored the Southampton game in terms of stats, and I thought there was a big drop off in terms of performance levels from the Villa game and the games before that. And I think with the changes that they made last night, I thought it was just a continuation. What I'm hoping for, and we'll probably talk about this later on, is it's going to be getting everybody prepped up for Chelsea. But I think that's two performances now where we've actually, performance levels have actually a little bit dipped to where they've been previously.
Do you think it's fatigue, Carl? Just to get your take on that, mate. Do you think, because we play such a high pressing game, don't we? And remember, Jurgen Klopp had this, didn't he, with Liverpool at a time where he played that type of football and then they started to tire. Do you think the lads are getting a bit tired under this kind of level of playing because we haven't got the depth in the squad to make as many changes for league games? Maybe they're burning themselves out a little bit.
Well, on my first show, when you weren't here, and it was me and Mark and Lee, that was my only concern throughout the rest of the season in terms of burnout. Now, they've obviously played prior to when they played the Southampton game, they played like 3 games in 6 days or 7 days or whatever it was. Yes, we haven't got like Champions League football or any European football, but I still think, like you said, the high press that Newcastle play, you have to be really, really fit for that. And that's probably one of the reasons why Jacob Murphy gets a game, because he's really, really good at a high press and keeps his place. But I do believe this World Cup, and we said this, Mark, the last time, I do believe this is a weird season where the World Cup's coming, and I think it's actually going to benefit Newcastle. And if you remember something what Eddie Howe said, he said he's almost going to be like a mini pre-season. So I think it'll be good after the Chelsea game for the majority of the squad to just recharge for a couple of weeks, then get back on the horse, go to Saudi Arabia to play that friendly that they're going to be playing, and then play the friendly down at St. James's, and then obviously have another push again, and hopefully with the addition of a couple of January signings as well.
I think Audie wanted to mention there as well. I think there was one player that caught your eye in amongst the dross, Audie, in the cup game as well. You wanted to single out, but it wasn't before.
Well, I mean, the save in the game from Pope was their only chance. Like, they had one sniff for goal, and Pope made a great save. And his penalty shootout saves were what got us through. Like,
great saves, instinctive, yeah,
exactly. But the outfield player that made the biggest difference over the 90 minutes was Joe Linton. And I know he didn't play on Sunday, which I do think has a bigger impact than we'd potentially have conceived 12 months ago. But he was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere. And once again, as soon as Bruno came on, their lad there up front, Mateta, just kept trying to come through the back, like tackle him, just try and knock him over with his physicality.
Take him out.
And
absolutely.
Straight away, Big Joe realised that was going on and was maybe 2 or 3 yards away from it every opportunity when he realised that was going to happen. And I think he obviously was suspended on Sunday. He had that break. He came back. He looked the one player who was playing at the level we expect from the rest of the players. And I do think that makes a difference. But obviously, the plaudits should all go to Nick Pope, because you don't save 3 penalties in the penalty shootout and not get the plaudits.
I just said Tommy in the comments has beaten Jimmy to the one-liner tonight. Pope was our saviour last night. Great comment there, Tommy. You've challenged Jimmy. He's thrown down the gauntlet there. I think just to go on Joe Linton before we'll get Mark's take, because Mark's actually got some stats as well to back up exactly what Carl was saying about maybe the performance dropping off. I think Carl makes a great point about the World Cup coming maybe at a good time. Players like Joe, it's obviously gutting for Joe that he hasn't got in the Brazil squad. That's a hell of a squad to get into. But I think the point Carl's making there, a little mini pre-season for Joe Linton is probably going to make him even better when he comes back. And because he's such a dynamic player and he's so integral to the way we play, as you rightly say, Audie, giving him rest, giving him recuperation, giving him a couple of games to get sharp, get that proper Joe Linton fitness back. He's going to come back when the season kicks off. There'll be tired legs from that World Cup, and they'll not want to be playing against Joe Linton. That's for damn sure, mate, when he's had a mini pre-season. But Mark, just getting your take on it, backing up what Carl said there, you actually had some stats, didn't you, to show that the Southampton game despite being a really favourable scoreline, wasn't as good of a performance.
I mean, just before coming to that, just on Joe, I mean, look, what bigger motivation can you get? You left out of the Brazil squad. That's a huge motivating factor for you to come back and absolutely, blitz it and just play at your absolute peak. And we'll go back to the weekend, and I mean the stats last night were weird because the first half was. I'll just touch on that first. I mean, Newcastle bossed possession right, through the game, 66% possession. It looks like it was pretty one-sided in that regards. Again, we weren't able to watch it, but 13 shots total, only 2 shots in the first half. So most of those shots at goal were in the second half. So it showed the changes that were made, like already said, the changes that were made in the second half changed the dynamic of the game, and obviously got Newcastle more on the front foot and a lot more tempo in their play. But then come back to the weekend in the Southampton game, and I think you're right. I think that high press it is going to wear players out. I almost feel that the last 2 games, having not seen last night, so it's a little bit difficult, but watching Southampton, they almost dropped off a little bit. And whether it was an effort to conserve energy a little bit so that they know that Chelsea's coming, they've piled an awful lot into that Villa game and into the games beforehand. And knowing that they probably have enough, and it's probably the wrong thing to do. It might not be right, but I just felt maybe that was the case, that they just dropped their levels a little bit against Southampton with a view to a cup tie where there would be changes and then a week off to then face Chelsea before the break. And if we look at the stats, I mean, again, you look at those stats and you think, well, Southampton bossed the game effectively. You look at the average positions of the players, and it can be misleading at times, but Southampton were much further forward than Newcastle. They applied much more pressure. They had far more shots, not as many on target though, and I think Audie's absolutely bang on the money. That Elyounoussi chance at the back post was key to the game. How he misses that, I have no idea. And if that happens, if he scores at that point, and then I think that the dynamic of the game changes in that regard. But Newcastle were clinical. 4 shots on target, 4 goals. They take their chances. And I saw some chatter afterwards about, well, Newcastle is not going to carry on because they've only got 1.42 XG for the game. But you look at the games previously, that's one of their lower XG in weeks. So they had an off day and they still managed to score 4 goals. And that tells you the mentality of the side, the quality that they've got going forward and the form that those forward players are in as well. But yeah, it was an off day, but they still won, and that's the mark of a good side. And last night again, they were off the pace for the much of the game by the looks of it, but still found a way to get through, and that comes down to Nick Pope again being a goal, and as a goalkeeper who has saved 3 penalties in a penalty shootout, I'd just like to say yes, it's all on Nick Pope for having done that.
I'm surprised you haven't said that earlier, Mark, with the goalkeepers union. Already put that in the chat. I'm actually amazed that he's beat you to that. But I think Carl just wants to add a little something into that as well. Carl, don't you, off the back of Mark's stats?
Yeah, Mark, if you can just put that back on a sec. One thing we've spoke about again in the program that I was on last is if you look at the players there for Newcastle, look at Miggy Almiron. He's the furthest player forward, and that's why I think in that particular game as well, and that's why we were probably as clinical, is because we had him, a player who was on form, and he had a couple of opportunities where he was right up the pitch. And as I say, like, it just speaks like chalk and cheese in terms of where he was last season to now. So I just wanted to raise that because I thought it's interesting that he's a wide forward or an inverted forward now. And you look at how high he is up the pitch, the furthest player forward.
It's a great setup for the next section, Carl. Honestly, you're a pro at this, mate. Well done. So we're celebrating, obviously, Eddie Howe's first year. I'll stick with you on this one, Carl, as well. We've obviously talked a lot about Eddie Howe on this channel. Everybody has. If anyone hasn't seen the high performance podcast he did with Jake from BT's, I mean, the guy is so impressive, mate. But just your take, Carl, firstly, then we'll get the other lads in for Eddie Howe year one. I feel like a Star Wars movie there. Eddie Howe Rogue One. How do you feel the first year's gone for you? Has he completely surpassed everything you would ever have imagined of him coming in, mate?
Do you know what? Like, literally, when we went for the previous manager, I'm not going to mention his name, but
he's at a shit club now anyway, Carl.
Yeah, but he's not even at any club, is he? I actually wanted Eddie Howe then.
Yeah.
I always thought I watched a conversation with Neville and Ferguson about talking about up and coming managers and different things like that, and Fergie rated. And said, watch out for this guy. Yes, he had a relegation with Bournemouth, but watch out for this guy. I said it in our chat. I said he has the potential to become the greatest ever Newcastle manager of all time because of where the club is now from a setup point of view with the foundations. But in terms of going back to him and what he's brought, I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised in the slightest based on the fact that he took a year out. He had offers based on what I've heard and what I've read, and then obviously that high performance documentary about he could have gone back into football, but he had in his head, I will be out of the game for a year. I will go to these clubs like Saracens. I will go to Atletico Madrid. I will go to some of the other clubs in Italy and really learn. And it's all about culture with Eddie. And I think his mantra is intensity is our identity. Like, you can't get any fairer than that in terms of how he is, and the fact that all he wants to do is improve players tells you when people wind me up and say, well, you've just spent 200 million. No, there's 6 or 7 players in that first 11 that he has improved tenfold. You've just mentioned it there, all about Joe Linton, Almiron. Do you know what I mean? There's 2 players that have turned it right round. So for me, I'm not shocked at all, and I think he's done absolutely brilliant.
We're seeing it with Longstaff as well. McCall, he's moving Longstaff back to kind of where he needs to be as well. The performances he's putting in, because there is a player in Sean, we all know that, but he just dipped away so far, didn't he? So,
well, he got Bruce Ball, didn't he? In terms of obviously the way it was. I mean, again, we spoke about this the last time. The one little thing with him to make him an even better player, Sean just needs to become a little bit quicker on the ball. He's that split second behind.
And some of the players there, the lads I mentioned in Kraft, Willock as well, Ash, good shout. Willock's been stupendous. Audie, you mentioned there obviously as well about Eddie Howe, and Carl mentions he knocked back some jobs. I mean, these weren't crappy little jobs either, mate, as well. These were some big jobs that he knocked back as well. But the one in particular was a huge job that he did.
I mean, the expectation was that he'd go to Glasgow, and I think Celtic presumed he was going to take the job. There was a bit of a quibble, I think, over backroom staff and how many of his backroom staff he was going to be allowed to bring in, and then whether he was prepared to work with the director of football of his choice or their choice. And then he turned down Celtic when they wouldn't meet his requirements, which I think is interesting.
Champions League could have been Champions League, couldn't it, mate? In all fairness,
yeah, but on the flip side of it, there's another manager who's recently had some success in Scotland, who's come down to the Premier League and found it a little bit difficult to adapt to life in the Premier League with the players that he had available to him. The biggest thing for me about Howe, Carl, you're absolutely right when you mentioned that 200 million one. The thing that sticks in my throat the most about that is our 60 million pound centre forwards played 3 games. So let's knock that off straight away and say we've had to spend 140 million.
Exactly.
Right, okay, that's an Alisson and a Darwin Núñez. Right.
Well, the back five.
Jurgen Klopp's tears can go away from me because he spent an awful lot of money on players, and he keeps telling us about, we've got no ceiling. Well, tell you what, when we've spent 75 million pounds on a goalkeeper, mate, I'll let you know. My take on Eddie Howe is this. You're right. It's not just though the players that he's improving, the way he's got it going, or the style of football. Those are all great things, and they help us as fans to be more positive about the football club because we can see the pathway and we can see the way in which he's trying to do it. And there's a direction, there's an aspiration to be better. The biggest thing for me is the idea that there are people who aren't getting a kick for the football club. And if you cause a fuss, he moves you on. Right? Martin Dubravka was moved on because
he's quite ruthless, isn't he, when he wants to be? Yeah.
We don't want him here causing a scene in the back because he's not playing games. Now, allegedly, the deal was that he would play League Cup and Europa League games for Man United. Well, he hasn't played a minute for them. He might play tonight. I don't know. News off the press. I don't know. I haven't looked at the team sheet. He might play for Man United tonight. But in reality, Martin Dubravka's gotten from being second choice at Newcastle, where he would have sat on the bench all season, to being third choice at Man United because Tom Heaton's getting on the bench most games.
Doesn't make sense.
Now, so I think he's been really, really good. I think Kraft, I think someone mentioned it before in the comments. Yeah, I think
Roger
Kraft's a little bit unlucky getting the injury. He did a Tranmere. I think he probably would have played last night instead of Manquillo. I also think that in terms of squad development, if you were a young player right now, and that high performance podcast is part of it, but if you were a young player right now and you wanted, well, there you are. Yeah, Mark, there you go. Yeah, he is starting. But the push on for Newcastle United now is that if you were a young player like Lee Clark, who went to Liverpool, you'd want to stay now. You'd want to stay because the club is being aspirational about wanting to kick on, and you can see a pathway to improvement. Like Short Longstaff, for me, under Bruce, had gone so far backwards.
Yeah, he was.
But I thought he was going
gone,
to be a Matty Longstaff that we wouldn't see him again, or we might see him for 2 or 3 games, then we wouldn't see him again. Sean's properly kicked on, and that's great. But Joe Willock, Almiron, like we've said, the one player for me, the one player who hasn't quite cracked yet is Maxi. He did against Man City. Like Maxi put an unbelievable performance. That was a great goal he scored against Wolves, but I'm not sure he's got full buy-in from Maxi yet about the way he wants to play.
Tin hat on. I don't think Maxi's a Howe player, and I think Maddison was going to be brought in for the Maxi replacement. I really believe that. When that was looked at in the summer, he was going to be the X factor player over Maxi, and Maxi's got a knuckle down. He's got injured at the wrong time. But yeah, I'm not sure Maxi will be here under Howe. Sorry, Carl, you were going to add something in there, mate.
I was going to say, again, on the High Performance podcast, they talk about the non-negotiables. And one of the things that Howe said was, you are in the team as a player. It's team first, not yourself. And going to all these things, I think with Maxi, yes, you need these players to go and express themselves. But I think sometimes, and you were there last night and you see them huffing and puffing, I think he needs to get that out of his system if he's to stay moving forward, because the probably reason why we hasn't been as ruthless in terms of getting more players out the doors because the squad's not strong enough. You watch a couple of transfer windows time, you'll be like, right, you're out. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's a great comment by Stu there as well. His management suits the new generation of players who want to improve, who want to get better. And he thinks other fans look at Smiley Howe, his baby face, but he has got a real steel to him. Mark, just as you always do, mate, with the supercomputer, it isn't just us talking about how better we are. These changes that Eddie Howe has implemented in year one are tangible, mate, aren't they? You can actually see them and you can measure them, can't you, mate? And I think you've got a little something there, haven't you, mate, that you've looked at?
The changes are massive, aren't they? I mean, you see that in purely the eye test. That it is just such a huge difference in the way that Newcastle play, the way that they're coached, the way that they're set up, the way that they approach games. I was just looking at some of the stats just from this season before we get into anything else. 1 defeat in 16 games, League and Cup this season. Only 12 goals conceded. They've only conceded more than 1 goal twice. 3 against City and 2 against Liverpool. Interestingly, if you go back to the last 19 games of last season, so it was just after the sort of winter period where it was, I think it was up to the Cambridge game. So 19 goals. There were only 5 defeats from that time, 20 goals conceded, and they only conceded more than 1 goal in 2 games. It was 5 against Tottenham and 5 against City. The massive change in the way that he approached games and the way that he had the team working constantly on that side of the game, and it doesn't always show, but the steel in that side is there for everybody to see, and the additions that have come in now as well just going to bolster that. But the stat side I wanted to kind of show was this 2022-2023. This is the first games this season, and obviously against the whole of last season. So this shows the numbers in the rank, and if you look at the sort of the top down to big chances missed, in every stat in that first stat, you're in the top 5. Last season, was offsides, you were 3rd. Other than that, it was outside of the top 10. Only hit the woodwork 7 times all of last season, 11 this season. It's an odd stat, but it goes to show what the attacking intent was.
Huge improvements, mate.
Big chances missed. You're already at 22. Only 6 behind last season. And again, it just goes to show what area of the pitch Eddie Howe has the team playing in. We touched on the stat and what's going on on Monday, in that the the starting position for Newcastle is about 3 or 4 yards further forward than it's been in previous seasons. It's just a complete change of mentality. And you look at go back. If you haven't watched that High Performance podcast with him, it is a sensational watch. I was impressed by Eddie Howe from his Bournemouth days beforehand. I've been completely blown away by him at Newcastle. I did think he would do a good job. If you go back and watch our previous entity of Cyber Pass, when we talked about the potential of who was coming in, I thought Eddie Howe would be the man. I did think it would be a stopgap, though. I did say at that point I thought it might just be a year or two at maximum before you took a next step and went on. But anything else that came with that would be a bonus. If he went on to become something magnificent, it was a huge bonus. At every step, though, he just impresses you as a man, as a manager, and this whole ethos of he's there to improve his players. And we've seen that list of players that he's already had a massive influence on a game. It's just he's just a sensational manager, and you know he's rightfully being bigged up now because the job he's done is phenomenal. And you can talk about the money spent all you want, already bang on the nail on the head before. You're missing a £60-odd million striker. You've brought in players to do roles. You've brought in players at good value that are young, that are wanting to improve. The likes of Botman has massive future ahead of him. Bruno's a huge future ahead of him. Dan Burns coming as a leader. Trippier's coming as a leader. Nick Pope's coming for next to nothing as a fantastic goalkeeper, but as a leader as well. And that's the mentality of that whole purchasing ethos. We'll bring it back to PK's, the no dickheads policy. It's all about the team. It's all about improving as a group and as the individual players. It's not about this mentality of, oh, it's me. It's us. That's all it's about. And it's been brilliant to watch.
Well, I watched a bit of the overlap that Kendall was on, actually, who was on with us of the week. So brilliant to see her on there as well. But I watched that and they got to Eddie Howe, and it was hosted by Arsenal Fan TV, Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV. And you could see all these other fans talking about Howe, and they were just all deathly quiet, nodding. So we've almost totally gone a 180 from a laughing stock of a manager that was the butt of the joke, you know, the comedy value that, oh, look at the state of them, they've got Steve Bruce there, to this impressive young, you know, articulate, forward-thinking manager that all of them are thinking, shit, I wish our club had got him, you know. Especially Arsenal, because at one point he was linked to them when he was at Bournemouth, wasn't he? And you look at what he's done with us, and like you say, Carl, improving the players. I mean, that spend is a lazy argument, as Audie rightly says. I think our back five, that's the best defence in the Premier League, by the way, costs £5 million less than Harry Maguire. So there's your argument gone out the window straight away. Anybody throws the money argument around. But I think there is one other thing that Eddie Howe has obviously brought to Newcastle United as well, which has been brilliant to see. He's also made it possible to play for England because he's totally transformed the fortunes, which is a segue into the next section we're talking about here. The England squad has been announced today, and it shows you the progress. Carl, I'm going to come to you first for this one, mate. It shows you the progress that we've made as a squad, that we've got 3 players, arguably 4 if you want to get James Maddison in January. We've got 3 players in this England squad. You know, obviously, Pope and Trippier were England players before they came here, but they had to perform here to keep their place in that squad. And they've excelled in the roles at Newcastle United as players and as leaders. But, I mean, firstly, mate, how buzzing are you for Callum Wilson to get that chance? And how much does he deserve it, mate, in that squad?
Well, take away Harry Kane, he's the best English striker, in my opinion, in the country. You know, like, he's the only thing that's ever been an issue with Wilson is his fitness. Because when he was injured, I think it was last season, he still ended up finishing the top goal scorer, and he missed a large chunk of last season. But in terms of, you say possibly 4 if we got Maddison, I'd argue that it could have potentially have been 6 because I think Dan Burns quite unfortunate. If you look at picking players on form, you won't find a left-sided defender in better form than Dan Burns, period. English player in the Premier League. And also, you talk about someone like Phillips at Man City, who's just come back from injury. I know they're not similar players, but in terms of having someone in with an engine, you could have argued that Joe Willock's performances recently would have warranted a look in the squad. So I think in terms of the development and the fact that we've got a core of English players in there now, it's quite exciting. And I think every single one that's been picked, it was deserved.
Actually, Audie, just get your take on this, Audie, as well. I think Carl's making a great point about Willock. I think Willock can rightly feel a bit aggrieved, really, when you look at Conor Gallagher getting in there. I mean, he's barely kicked his own arse this season, really. Yes, he was class at Palace on loan. He's been a bit shit for Chelsea, really, and Mount's been pretty off form and all, but I know he would get in because he's a golden boy, isn't he? But Gallagher getting in that squad, Phillips, I think Mark had a stat earlier that he's played 14 minutes of football or something after that. Joe Willock, as Carl says there, at the minute, in terms of English midfielders, is there anybody with better stats really than him at the minute in terms of what he's doing in the game?
I think obviously we watch Willock week in, week out, so it's easy for us to see the hard yards that Joe Willock puts in. I'd also say that if Joe Willock had matched his XG, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but if he'd matched his XG
55 when he first came.
Yeah, but if he'd matched his XG, Joe Willock would have made a brilliant argument for it, because I think he would have had 5 or 6 or maybe 7 goals by now. I think probably the difficulty with Willock is England only play those 2 in midfield. I think if you play 3, you could maybe get away with a Willock, but we don't. And Phillips was a surprise to me. I know he came on at half-time or just after half-time, I think, last night to try and get some minutes under his belt for Man City. And I think Calvin Phillips is a really, really good footballer, so you'd get a lot of grief if you didn't take him. On Burn, it's difficult to say about Dan Burn, really, if I'm honest. I think he does an unbelievable job for us. I'm always worried, though, that in a game there's going to be a winger who's going to
tie him in knots.
Yeah, I felt like for that El Nufc chance on Sunday, Che Adams did a brilliant job of exposing what Burns' weakness is, which is sometimes he plays like a centre half in the left back slot, so he gets touch tight, and then he gets turned. Having said that, don't get me wrong, he's been part of the best defence in the country. However, there was talk of Tyreek Mitchell getting in. I think one of the comments, I think it was Ash made the comment, was he as bad as Anderson said? Yeah, he was awful. He was absolutely awful, Tyreek Mitchell. And if he'd gone instead of Dan Burn, I would have been furious. I think Burn and Willock probably fall into that gap of players who aren't quite good enough to get in the England squad now.
Do you remember the England B team? They might have got on with that man. Letitia was in that.
Just about to come to that.
The other thing I was just going to say, and it's a difficult one, is obviously Callum Wilson is a fantastic footballer, and we're very, very lucky to have him. He just absolutely destroyed Tyrone Mings playing against Villa the other week. There was the one where Mings went clutch in his back when Wilson crashed that header off the crossbar, which was his hat-trick chance. And Mings sort of seemed to be looking around desperate for the referee to blow the whistle. Wilson just outmuscled him, got in front of him, and I turned around to the bloke. I just turned around to the bloke sat next to him and said, the only one of them should be on the plane to Qatar, and it definitely the bloke who's playing centre half for Villa. I have got a bit of there's some players who I thought might get in on this basis of they've always been there, like your Sancho's and the such like. I'm really pleased that Saka is going. I'm really pleased that the Trippier's going. I'm quite surprised that he's taken Grealish, and I say this only because I think we were just talking about it before, but Southgate doesn't seem to rate him, so that's a bit of a surprise. But for the 3 Newcastle players, I think Pope has the potential to get minutes. Probably very few. If we win our first 2 group games, who knows? You might say, right, okay, Nick, you can have 90 minutes here against Wales, possibly. I think Trippier will get minutes. I don't think Callum Wilson will get minutes unless there's an injury to Harry Kane or the games are out of sight. I don't think Wilson will get minutes.
I think the reason Grealish is going is Southgate wants him to get drunk and call all the players shit, so then they suddenly become much better in the tournament, and then they end up scoring 4 or 5 goals. That's possibly what it is. Mark, just to get your take on obviously the Magpies in the England squad. I mean, you got to go right back to kind of the days of Shearer, Robley, Batty, to see this kind of level of Newcastle contingent in the national squad. It shows the progress under Howe as well, mate. But like we said there, it shows a great example to these young English players like Willock and stuff. Why would he move on when he could think, you know what, if I just listen to this gaffer, I can force my way in that picture? And do you think, like the lads as well, maybe, Dan Burns a bit unlucky not to get in, like Carl said, mate? Do you agree with that? Or do you think maybe a bit like Audie, that he's not quite, Dan Bird's not quite an England player.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Dan Burn has been very good. I don't think he's England standard. I don't think he's ever going to force any of the guys out from centre back. He's not a left back. Let's be truthful. He's done a very good job at left back. I'm not going to deny that. He's been excellent, but he's not a left back, and he's not an international standard left back. He's filled a gap for now at Newcastle, and he's done it very well. But I think he's played well enough to have been deserving of being in the conversation. But he would just, I just think he would come up against a standard of player at that World Cup that would just show what his weaknesses really were. And he wouldn't bottle it. He wouldn't back down. He would always be up for the fight. But it's just that's his standard. I think we were at that level. I don't think he's got that next step.
Do you think Trippier right back or left back, mate, for you? Somebody put that in the comments there. Do you think Trippier right or left back?
Well, I think he's the best right back in the country at the moment.
100%.
By a country mile. He's streets ahead of the likes of Trent. You'd argue Reece, if he's fit, would probably start in that position, but he's not. So I think he starts at right back. I think Shaw starts at left back. And I think you probably see Maguire and Stones in the middle and that back four. I'm panicking over the thought of it already.
Carl's not happy with that, mate, by the looks of it.
No. But then you can't, there's names in the squad. You were talking about Calvin Phillips before. I mean, in grand total, he's played 59 minutes for Manchester City this season. 59 minutes, and he's going. And I know it was a shoulder injury, but he's been out for that long. Kyle Walker's not going to be fit before the end of the group stage, and he might make the last group game. And the reason for Reece James not going was the fact that he wasn't going to be fit until the latter stages of the tournament. Why take Kyle Walker then if he's not fit to start? And I know he did this with Maguire in the Euros, but it's too much of a risk of a player that predominantly is based around pace to come in at that stage late with very little match training. There's no friendlies leading up to the tournament this time round, so you're straight into games. And I just think it's such a dangerous thing to bring in a player who is based all around pace to do that. We saw that with Michael Owen previously when he blew his knee out. He wasn't fit. He should never have gone. And that can happen and easily to a player like that. But yeah, we'll go back to the Newcastle contingent. I think it's brilliant. I think Callum Wilson absolutely deserves his place on the plane. I think he's been excellent. Just to bring up a couple of interesting little quick stats for this season, the sort of four, and I missed Rashford off this list actually, but you can see his goal per 90-minute rate is above, massively above Tammy Abraham. It's above Ivan Toney, who I don't think, given the circumstances, had any chance of being on the plane with the investigation that's hanging over him. Wilson is by far and away the best of the England strikers behind Harry Kane, and it gives you something totally different, because he's not a Harry Kane style of player. But I think Audie's right. I just think his minutes will be severely limited to games where, say Iran, where we could potentially be massively out of sight in the game, or if we win the first two games, the position is secured, and he can rest Kane for the Wales game and play Wilson at that point.
Yeah, Mark. Audie mentioned they wanted to bring in a point about Trippier and Luke Shaw. I think Ash had mentioned a comment there. I left it up for a while just for your finishing, Mark. Just England don't have international left backs. I mean, this argument for Trippier going either side, Audie, I mean, would you play him over Shaw? Is that what you want to say, mate? Do you think you would have him there, or would you rather have him at right back?
No, he's a right back, and you nullify one of your best threats at right back by putting him left back. I know people have got a real down on Luke Shaw because he's not had a great 12 months. I don't think that's helped by what I can only describe as the new soap opera club, which is Manchester United. They've taken over us as the club that seem to have a crisis every 20 minutes. I don't think he's been helped by that. I don't think he was helped by his treatment by Mourinho, etc. But I just want to go back to the Euros final. It's a cross from Trippier on the right to Shaw on the left that puts England 1-0 up in that final. And we can criticise Luke Shaw for lots of different things, but I think it's the second goal against Germany. It's Luke Shaw on the overlap who puts the ball in that made sure that England beat Germany in the last 16-hole quarterfinal. I can't remember which game. Luke Shaw looks a better player with England because of the fact that he's got more confidence and he knows what his role is with England. His role is, whenever he can, to sort of act as a counter buffer. He either drops back in or he pushes forward, depending on what Trippier's doing or what's happening with Kyle Walker or wherever it might be. Just to follow up on Mark's point, I know the squad can be changed up to 24 hours before the first game kicks off based on injury. I've got a funny feeling that Kyle Walker doesn't end up being involved in that squad. I've got a feeling that he's named in the squad because we can't put him in unless someone gets injured. And then if he isn't fit 2-3 days before, that actually they call a substitute replacement up. And I also think that's why Ben White's in, because he can play as a right back, a right side centre half, or on the right side of a 3. And I think that's why Ben White's made the cut.
Well, we're going to do.
To be fair, I was going to say, to be fair, Ben White has had an excellent season so far as well for Arsenal. So I do think you're right with that. I think that, I do think it's mad to kind of take him in that regard if that's going to be the case. But you are right; you can change the squad. So if they get to a couple of days, he's not going to make the groups. And I think you'll see a change.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens. We're probably going to do a bit more of an in-depth dive into the England setup and everything, and just have a look at all the other Newcastle United players at the World Cup, kind of over the World Cup period. So we're not just going to disappear off and have a little holiday, guys. So make sure you keep it evermore. We'll certainly have some videos coming up. So we're going to just finish up with the Chelsea preview, and we've also got the prize giveaway. I haven't forgot, Mark, before you shout. He was going to shout there. I haven't forgot about the prize giveaway. We're going to do that in a second, but we're just going to get a little take on Chelsea. So just getting your take on Chelsea, Carl, before we break up for the World Cup break. I mean, we're sitting in the top 4, mate, rightly so. We're there on merit. We absolutely deserve to be there. Chelsea are coming to this game not particularly in good form, mate. People are starting to raise eyebrows about Potter ball. They're coming to the fortress that is St James's Park. Do you fancy us to do them, mate?
Yeah, based on the performances that we've had in the last couple of games. Chelsea are sitting in 7th. Our points per game at home is 2.14. So it's fairly solid, and it would have been higher for the decision against Palace. That should have been a goal. Chelsea's obviously not won in a couple away from home, and I think they'd be there for the taking because they've obviously had a few injuries themselves as well. And I'm not sure if Potter actually knows what his best team is, because if you look at the way Chelsea play, they talk about right through the game he'll be able to make and change the system. So he changes the system like every 20 minutes is what I was reading into. And it's just bonkers, really. I feel you need to be able to adapt to how a team is playing against you. But to change your team, like, the players probably don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So I was going to just say, I think Saturday night, a nighttime game, it's going to be the last game before the World Cup. The place is going to be jumping. Hopefully, War Flags does a cracking display, and I just think it'll be similar to when we turned off Arsenal over last season. So I'm gonna go for like a 2-0 win, Newcastle, based on the way I think we're setting up.
Superb. I love the way you're thinking, mate. Jackson, the comments saying, I think the fact that we're not coming in this game as nailed on favourite speaks volumes for where we are. Absolutely, mate. We are definitely the team that people are scared to come up against. Mark, just getting your take on this. If you had said at the start of the season that Newcastle United could go into this, quite frankly, ludicrous World Cup break, let's be honest, we haven't even said that yet, have we? But let's be honest, this ludicrous World Cup break in the top 4, having played Manchester City, Manchester United, Spurs, Liverpool, to name a few. If you said Newcastle United were going to be top 4, people probably would have strapped you in a jacket and put you in a rubber room, I'd imagine, mate. So what do you think going to this game, mate? Do you fancy us to get the win?
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine what the comments would have been if one of us had suggested that pre-season. Christ, it would have been torn to shreds.
Would have
but
been buried.
I mean, that's being, for you guys, it's probably being a homer at that point. Yeah, we're going to win the league, but no. Look, it's been phenomenal, and the fact that you go into this game knowing that whatever happens, you sit top 4 for the World Cup break is sensational. I think Chelsea will be fearful coming to St James's Park now. You're right. You mentioned it being a fortress at the moment. It absolutely is. They're on a run of 2 wins in 7. in all competitions, so that they're not in great form. I get what Carl says about changing style, changing sort of way of playing and formation and stuff like that. It's evident in sort of previous games. There was a clear indication of that when they played at Villa Park a few weeks ago, where for the first half, Villa absolutely battered them. Couldn't take the chances. They were playing with Sterling playing at wing back for some godforsaken reason. And then Potter changed things up massively, and they went on to win the game. But it's those, I think sometimes that will work in occasions, and other times players will get slightly confused by what goes on unless those are drilled into them over time, and he's not been there very long. He's not going to have that long-term impact that Howe's had, for example. And just remember, when Howe first started, it took a while for those sort of changes to happen. But as I say, I think they're going to come in slightly fearful of playing at St James's now, because the crowd is going to be. It is a Saturday night game. It's going to be loud. I'm dying to see what War Flags have got in store for the last game before the break. And I do think Newcastle will win it. And it, you look, maybe it's 2-0 is probably a good shout. We go 2-1 because I do think Chelsea have quality there. But I think Newcastle will end this mini season up until the break and go away in third.
Absolutely, mate. And just Ash's comment there, making a joke about the rubber room being BDSM. There's only one person getting fucked, Ash, and that's Chelsea on Saturday, mate. Believe you me. So just getting your take on this one, Audie. Are you going to give us a full house, mate? Do you think Chelsea are going to be put to the sword yet again by Eddie Howe's Mags, mate? Or are you a little bit more reserved and fearful about this game?
Well, I'm always fearful as a Newcastle fan when we're overly optimistic about
see it on your face, mate. I can see the eye twitching.
I've got years of disappointment and being let down with being over optimistic to get through. And there's a few things I really take into account with Chelsea. One is, like Mark said before, Potter arrived 5-6 games in the season when he spent his whole pre-season building that Brighton team. He then had to come up. He got Cucurella back, who's effectively about to become manager, who doesn't seem to be on the same wavelength as he was last season, a different system. I think that's had an impact on why he keeps changing the dynamics of the team so regularly. A second thing to say is Chelsea, unlike us, have played pretty much every single midweek since the season started. Their players must be shattered. Someone was saying, there's a stat, and I don't know if this is true, that if Man United get to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup and the semi-finals of the Europa League, they actually don't have enough midweeks to fulfill all their league fixtures between now and the end of the season.
Mental.
So they have to
because
do
of the World Cup, though, isn't it? The World Cup screws up.
So they have to do a Friday, Monday, Thursday, Championship manager style, when you used to get the end of the season and you were in 4 fixtures and you had to work out your system.
I'd quit by then, Audie. I didn't have the patience, mate. I'd quit by then.
That doesn't really help us coming in this game. First of all, do I think Newcastle United will be mad up for it? Yes, I do. Do I think the atmosphere will be electric? Yes, I do. Do I think War Flags will put on a brilliant display? Yes, I do. Am I slightly concerned because our last 2 games we haven't played particularly well? Yes, we got results in both games, and that's a mark of a good side that you beat teams when you don't play well. Having said that, I think Chelsea might take some heart from the fact that Potter's had a pretty good record against us up here. Brighton have given us, when he was Brighton manager, they gave us some hidings. Now, all right, I accept that was with the cabbage in charge, but we have to be. We do have to be aware that he does sometimes when Chelsea click, they really click. And I just
still got good players.
I just don't want us to be complacent. I don't think the players will be complacent anyway. And by the reaction of Bruno, I don't know if anyone saw Bruno's Twitter about 45 minutes after the game yesterday, and obviously it might not have been him, but it was a proper Portuguese. Like, I'm really, really sorry. I can't believe I missed that penalty.
Yeah,
I hate missing this. I'll never let you down like that again. And I was kind of like, mate, we won. Like, it's all right.
Did you see his face in the team picture?
Yeah,
he looked like someone ran over his dog or something.
And I do think that's the level of it hurts them when they're not playing.
That's the manager, though, isn't it? That's the manager in them telling them how important it is to win games, though, isn't it? That's probably why he feels that way, and obviously him as a character as well.
Yeah, and it's the standards that they've set for themselves. Chelsea have done well to get through to be honest, Chelsea did well to get through the Champions League group. They played Milan twice, and I thought Milan were the main challengers, and they didn't get close. And once Tomori got sent off in that second game, they didn't get close. And Chelsea are a good side. I think they need the January transfer window to sort out their squad, and they need they need the Todd Bowley to step back and actually let Graham Potter choose who he wants in his team, not the owners trying to make superstar signings like Aubameyang, who was never going to ever suit the system that they had.
Absolutely. What's your prediction for scores, or are you going to put your neck on? What do you reckon?
I think a bit like Mark. I think it'll be 2-1. I think Chelsea will score because I think they're a good side and they come for. Having said that, it does depend on who they're able to put out in midfield, and if they go with that double pivot of Kovacevic and Jorginho at the back of it, I would worry for them because that invites pressure onto them a little bit with the three midfielders.
Absolutely. I'm just chuckling there in the comments. Aaron banged in a comment that said pubes, and out of nowhere, just these sex bots came in. Do you think they're turned on, Mark, by certain algorithms? If you say pubes, you just get all these weird comments. You're on mute. You're on mute, mate.
Says, yeah, less of that talk because it's driving those sort of things towards us. But that was funny.
Nobody drop the C-bomb; it'll explode. My God,
God help us!
For the love of God, thank God, Carter's
Christmas. No crap, no.
Yeah, we can talk about that one. That sees all right. But yeah, I'm with you lads as well. Before we move on to the exciting part of the show, obviously the prize draw. I'm with you lads. I think full house. I think we'll win. I think the lads will be right up for it. They want to sign off for the World Cup in style. I think the players who are going to the World Cup will want to show the fans what they can do. Bruno, like you say, Audie, he's the type of lad that'll be so pumped for that game. Even though we're all right, you missed a pen, you're still class, we love you. He'll feel like he has to do something special to win that game. And I don't think Chelsea's midfield can live with us. I really don't. When Joe Linton's on the form he's on, when Bruno's playing the way he is, Mickey, how busy he is and just how much ground he covers. Wilson will want to get a goal to sign off and go to England as well. So I'm really confident. I think we'll win 2-1 as well, because I do think Chelsea are no mugs, but I think that the atmosphere and everything will be too much for them, and we'll sign off for the World Cup in perfect style. So I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Obviously, Saturday night game will be brilliant under the lights as well. I just hope everyone's not too pissed to hold the flags up. It'll look a bit ropey with the war flags at that time of night, guys. But we're going to sign off with a prize draw. Mark has been itching to get this all sorted. He's like a game show host in the background, Mark. He's like Michael McIntyre spinning the wheel. So this is the time.
No, don't like this game.
That was the first thing I could think of, Mark. Sorry, mate. So we're going to do the prize draw. So if you don't know already, as we mentioned, we've hit 2,000 subscribers. With massive thanks to you guys who have clicked that button. We love you for that. Great to have you on board. We've got a cracking little community. So the comments, sometimes we get distracted reading them because you're having so much of a chat in there as well. It's brilliant. We've got a great community there. Loads of new subscribers as well recently, so we'll love it. But we'll put you all in. We're going to put you all in a prize draw now. I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Debbie McGee in a minute. He's going to run it. And we're going to pull off. We're going to pull out the winner. Sorry, pull off. God, I'll start them algorithms again. We're going to pull out the winner from a random selector who is going to win the training top that we talked about in 2K. So over to you, Debbie McGee. Start your wheel of fortune going, mate.
Thanks, Paul. No, so yeah, to be clear, that obviously we ran it from the video the other day. We said that the draw, the entries would close at kickoff last night. So from that, the people who commented on the video, there were 33 entries into that. So bear with me. This is the first time I've ever done this live to share my screen with the world. Try not to share anything.
Don't have any of them dodgy sites open again, Mark. You didn't click on them links, did you? Don't have them dodgy sites.
There we go. Right. So, random name picker. I have put all 33 names into this. Oh, God. What am I doing? I'm losing the plot. There we go. So, all 33 names in the list. So, we will just pick a random name.
Here we go. Drum roll.
And the winner is a Mr. Ian Sartoria.
Fantastic, Mr. Sartoria. Yes.
To Ian.
Happy days. So, well, Ian is a local lad, so I think we can easily arrange that delivery of the training top. So, Ian, if you're watching me, make sure you DM us your details, give us your sizes. We don't need anything else. We don't need turn-ons or what flicks you switch like the dodgy links we just had before. Just give us your sizes and we're going to get that training top sent out to you. And you too can look like Eddie Howe, mate. But thank you for smashing that button and dropping a comment too, Ian. It's great. And everybody who was in the draw, you're just all legends. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the Evermore family. And everybody else just Peter's gutted. Don't blame me, Peter. I didn't click the button. It was the Debbie McGee. It was her.
It's all on Debbie. There you go.
It's all on Debbie.
It's my weekend name.
Nothing to do with Paul, but as I mentioned at the start, guys, obviously, if you're new to the channel tonight, make sure you click that button, like and subscribe. You never know, when we get to 3,000, we might do another prize giveaway. It might be a bottle of wine from Odie's FA Cup cellar, possibly, when he's a bottle of champagne or something like that. But we love having you guys on board. Go on, Mark, sorry.
I was going to say, given that we were pushing out our new mugs the other day, we might go as far to maybe get a couple of those to give away at some point as well.
Might very well do.
Might be an idea.
Great show. But yeah, that's us all wrapped up for this week, guys. We will be back with a bit of a preview for Chelsea and a review as well for the last game. So have to find those free kills. Brilliant, Tommy. I love it, mate. I love it. But yeah, we'll be back for some obviously previews and reviews for the Chelsea game. We'll do one more Evermore after Chelsea before we sign off. And Mark and I will probably be having a bit crack about the World Cup and what's going on Monday. So as I said, make sure you keep it Evermore, guys. We'll still be around in the World Cup. We'll have a few specials popping up as well. Maybe look at some Newcastle legends of years gone by, just to make sure we give you Newcastle United content. So until then, let's keep supporting that Team McCoy United. We're all signing off. Have a good one, guys. See you later.
Take care, guys.
Bye.